Hello everyone. So today in this case study, what we're going to be analyzing a politics and economics case study, specifically data from the LAPD. This analysis is similar to the one that Suraj Rampur conducted on a older data set. So if you're interested in this, I would highly recommend checking that out on his GitHub. But let's get on with this one. So the first thing you want to do is before starting to analyze any data is first importing the libraries and packages that you need. So for this case, we would need pandas and numpy to analyze the data and clean it, and then matplotlib and seaborn to visualize it and get deeper insights for the data. So let's import those. The next thing we want to do is read our CSV file. So in order to do that, we need to get the path that the CSV file is in. And we do that by importing pathlib and doing path.cwd, which stands for current working directory. So now that we have the path of the file, we put that into our read CSV along with the name of the actual CSV file. And we get our data set. Now this data set takes a little bit longer to load because it's very large, and I'll show you just how large in a little bit. But here we go. But one of the things we want to do when working with a data set this large is filter it so that we're only looking at what's relevant, because if you keep working with a larger data set, your memory is going to run out. And also it's just going to take a lot more time. So this data set in particular has over 2 million rows, which is very large. So the first thing we want to do is condense our data set so we're only looking at the columns that are relevant to us. And if we're just looking in terms of a high level view of our data set, the first thing we want to do is minimize the columns. So for this case, I've only chosen columns that relate to the crime on a higher level. So the date it was reported, the time it occurred, the area in which it occurred, and the type of time, as well as the location. So let's run that. There we go. Okay, and then another thing is for this case study in specific, we want to only look at data that's most recent, so from the year 2019. So as we can see, the date and time format is quite standardized, so it's a bit difficult to just look up 2019. So instead, a way we can do that is to look at each value in the row date reported and check if it contains the term 2019. If it does, that means it occurred in it was reported in the year 2019. If not, it gets filtered out. So let's run that. And as you can see now, our data set is only 220,000 rows long, which is a lot less than what we had before. Now, another thing about the format of the date and time is that it makes it a bit difficult to analyze if we want to look for specific days or specific months. And so one thing we would want to do is break that apart and maybe create a separate column for the month that it occurred. So what we can do first is look at the data type of the value in that column, and we can see it's a string, which is great because that means we can use string functions to split up the date and time. And so what I've done over here is I've defined a function that does that for us. So first it splits it by the space, meaning it splits it by the date and then the time. And then once we have that, we can split the date aspect by the backslashes so that we get the month, day, and year separately. And one way we can see that is by just trying it out on one value. So as you can see, you get oops, I think I made a mistake. Yup, so this is supposed to be year. sorry. Yep, so there we go. We get the day, month, year, and then time. Now, for the case of this analysis, I don't think I need all four variables. So what I'm going to do is only have it replace the month and run that again. And now I'm going to apply that function to each value in the column date reported and create a new value for all of the values that the function returns. So now we can see we have a new column month, and what it's done is it has each month that the crime was reported. We have that, but it might be easier to read if we had it, instead of 02, have it as February or March, April, etc. So one way we can do that is by using replace. So what I'm doing over here is replacing each numerical value with the actual month, so that it's going from numerical to categorical data. So once we run that, as you can see, now it's in Feb, March, April, etc. Okay, so now that our data set is clean, we want to now explore it on a high level and look at what exactly is happening overall in crime in LA in the year 2019. So one of the first things I would look at is what are some of the most common crimes that have occurred in 2019. So in order to do that, we want to group the data by this column, get the count, and then sort the values so that ascending equals fault, which means the top occurring crimes are at the top. As we can see here, the top 5 crimes are assault, burglary from a vehicle, petty theft, stolen vehicles, and then vandalism. Okay, so now I'm curious about what times these crimes have occurred. So in order to do that, we follow a similar process, except we group the data by the time occurred. So and then we plot it by time, the distribution of crimes that have occurred in relation to time. So the plot that we're given is, the x-axis is quite large, so we can't look at the data close up. So if we look at the time occur here, it looks like it's in military time. So one thing we can do is set the X limit so that the highest it will go to is 2400. So now when we run it, we get a closer view. So as we can see, majority of crimes start occurring after midnight, and they go on, I would assume, till about 6 a.m. A little after 5 a.m. essentially. And that makes sense because midnight to about 5 a.m. is when there's no daylight. Okay, so now that we've understood that, let's see in what areas the most number of crimes occur. So we see that 77th Street has the highest number of crimes in 2019, followed by Southwest and Central. Okay, so that's interesting. So Southwest is actually where USC is located. And so something I might want to do is analyze the crime data that occurs in Southwest specifically to understand the safety of USC as a college campus. Now, in order to do that, let's create a Southwest data frame where we're only looking at area names that are Southwest. So now that we have that, I'm going to pass it on to Dhruv, who is going to do a deeper analysis of crime in the Southwest area.